the iris reflex. The iris reflex is part of the GCSE Bio course, and it's the first video uploaded on this channel. So, what is the iris reflex? First, we need to know this first. Before understanding what the iris reflex is, we just need to know what it does first. It controls how much light enters the retina. Because if too much light enters, it can damage the retina, right? And if too little enters, we can't really see well in the dark. That's why when we look at the sun, we kind of we can't see properly, and it tries to dim it up. So what's the purpose of the iris reflex? Because bright light damages the retina. Bright light damages the retina, so we have reflexes in order to protect it. That's it. The iris reflex is bright light damages retina, so we have reflexes that are there to protect it. All right, let's take a look at this cross-section diagram of an eye. A cross-section is a side view of an eye. All right, so here we have the iris and here's the retina. And basically what happens is light comes in and then the iris comes and then it just directs the light in the direction, something like that. All right, so the iris is here. Here's a front view of an iris, and at the center of it, we have the pupil. So the pupil here would be somewhere around here. That'd be where the pupil is. Now we need to be able to label this diagram and know the different parts of the iris reflex, basically. Pupil's at the center, right? Now, think of it this way. We do circle and we learn about the pi r squared. So to calculate the area of a circle, it's radius squared, stuff like that, right? So we know about the circumference and the radius. So what is the thing that surrounds a circle called? It's called the circumference, right? So from that, it's called the circular muscle. It's even easier to remember than a circle. It's literally just circular muscle. And we need to know one more thing. There's circular muscles, and then there are radial muscles. Radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the edge of the circle, right? In the exact same way, the radial muscles are the distance from the pupil to the end of the iris. So we just have a bunch of lines that kind of looks like a spider web going from the pupil to the edge of the iris. And these are the radial muscles. I kind of misspelled that there, radial muscles. Radial muscles going from the center to the end, just like a circle. And circular muscles, circumference, around the center. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, everything else is easy. We just need to know two different things: bright light and dim light. Our eyes adjust to the bright lights and dim lights, right? So it's the exact same concept. We just need to know that in bright light, we need to let in less light, right? And in dim light, we need to let in more because we want to see in the dark. So we have less light for bright and more light for dim. So if we want to let in less light, the common sense logic would be that the pupil needs to get smaller so less light can fit through. That's exactly what happens. If the pupil at the center gets smaller, then the stuff surrounding it, the circular muscles, these must also get smaller, right? So the circular muscles, I'll just write circular, smaller. All right? Circular muscles get smaller. And what is the word for smaller? They contract. So better than smaller is circular muscles contract. And then the radial muscles that are like this, I told you before, right? The spider webs. What happens if the circular muscles contract? The distance between the pupil and the edge gets bigger, right? Because the pupil's smaller. So these, the radial muscles, would get relaxed. They get bigger, so they relaxed, right? And it's just the opposite for dim lights. We need to let in as much light as possible, right? So the pupil needs to get big. So then the circumference, circular muscles surrounding it, circular, would now, these are the ones that relax because they're getting bigger. Circular muscles relax, and the radial muscles, like the spider webs, just like before, these, since the pupil has gotten bigger, there's less distance for these to cover, right? So these radial muscles contract and they get smaller. And that is basically the entire concept of iris reflex. In bright light, you need to let in less light. So the radial muscles, the ones that surround the pupil, these get relaxed because the pupil is smaller, so the distance gets larger. And the circular muscles contract because if the pupil gets smaller, the center gets smaller, everything surrounding it just has to get smaller. Complete opposite for the dim lights. When the pupil gets bigger to let in more light, the radial muscles end up contracting because, common sense, when the pupil gets bigger, the distance from the end to the pupil is going to get smaller. And the circular muscles would relax because, well, pretty obvious, right? The pupil is getting bigger, so everything surrounding it has to get bigger. And that is pretty much it for the iris reflex. All right, just one more thing on the subject of bright and dim light. In the retina, we have cone and rod cells, right? So the retina contains a lot of these like tiny light-sensitive receptor cells, and these are the cells that kind of detect the light. And these cells are split into two key groups. There are cone cells and there are rod cells. Now, they're used for basically different purposes. The cone cells detects different wavelengths of light, and this allows colors can be seen, right? And that's why, like, when it's bright, we're able to see color. So it's only good in bright light and it can see color. There's rod cells, and these are sensitive only in low light, and they detect basically black and white. That's why, you know, when you're like waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, where you can't really see color and you just see black and white. That's because the cone cells don't work and you're just relying on your rod cells that are more sensitive but only do black and white. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching the first episode of Stuplaned. Student Explained. For students, by students.